So once upon a time in ancient Greece, the philosopher Socrates walked up to this aspiring young politician named Alcibiades. Alcibiades was the most ambitious, the most well-connected young man in the city. He was intelligent, he was handsome, and he was eager to acquire honor and power. And then one day, Socrates walks up to him and literally calls him a moron to his face. These two guys then have this debate. It's recounted in a dialogue written by Plato, and it concerns what I consider the most critical question in all of ethics. Should we pursue our own advantage, even if it means doing injustice to others? Do we really need to care about other people? Do we need to worry about justice and morality and goodness? Or is it okay to only care about our own self-interest? Now, over the course of his conversation with Alcibiades, Socrates is able to persuade this young guy that goodness does matter, that we shouldn't just exploit other people for personal gain. In this video, I'll explain how Socrates does that. I'll take you through Socrates' arguments so that you understand them. And so by the end of this video, you'll have answers to this critical ethical question. Do you need to care about justice, or are you free to only think about your own advantage? Let's begin with an illustrative example. You've probably heard of the trolley problem. Let's call this the lunchroom conundrum. So let's say you work in an office somewhere with a communal kitchen and a communal refrigerator, and you have a coworker named Todd. Todd makes sandwiches every day for lunch, and they are delicious. Much better than the stupid sandwiches you make for lunch. So here's the question. It's lunchtime. You're hungry. You forgot to pack a lunch. Should you steal Todd's delicious sandwich and take it for yourself? First, let's consider why this will be a good idea. Number one, free lunch. Number two, you are hungry. You need to eat. Eating this sandwich solves that problem. Number three, Todd's sandwiches are delicious. You will have a nice time eating this tasty sandwich. So you'll save money, you'll satisfy your hunger, you will take pleasure in a delicious sandwich. Now, why might it be a bad idea to steal Todd's sandwich? First, Todd suffers. He has nothing to eat. Second, Todd suffers another way. He also loses the time he spent making the sandwich. He loses the money he spent on the sandwich. Now he's got to go out and buy a second lunch. Third, and this is a big one, you might get caught, and there would be consequences to that. Todd might hate you. Second, you might get fired or something. So in that way, taking this delicious Todd sandwich would be bad for you. But let's imagine you won't get caught. What if you could guarantee that you'll get away with it? In that scenario, Todd still suffers, but you don't. You just benefit. The only thing stopping you in that case is, I don't know what, your conscience? Why should you care about Todd's suffering if you benefit? So assuming you can get away with it, why shouldn't you steal Todd's lunch? By the way, this video is part of a new series I'm calling The Summer of Goodness. I'm spending the summer making videos about goodness, on moral goodness, questions about moral goodness, books about moral goodness, videos on thinkers who meditate on and argue about goodness. So, if you're interested, follow along. Now, Alcibiades and Socrates debate a higher stakes version of this lunchroom conundrum in Plato's dialogue. Alcibiades, remember, is an ambitious young guy. He wants to go into politics. Alcibiades wants to be in charge. He wants to rule over other people. But Socrates asks him, don't you need to know something about justice before you run a city? Seems like kind of a big deal. But Alcibiades, who is very clever, responds, well, actually, Socrates, I don't think I need to understand justice at all. Actually, Socrates, I think the Athenians and the other Greeks rarely discuss which course is more just or unjust. They think that sort of thing is obvious, so they skip over it and ask which one would be advantageous to do. In fact, though, what's just is not the same, I think, as what's advantageous. Many people have profited by committing great injustices, and others, I think, got no advantage from doing the right thing. So Alcibiades suggests here that maybe justice and advantage are different things. More than that, maybe advantage matters more than justice does. Maybe we should spend more time thinking about what benefits us than we spend thinking about doing the right thing. Now, we encounter versions of this argument on the daily. That's part of why I think this debate, this dialogue is so important, because this is actually a debate that we have in our own heads and that we see out in the public discourse. There are small scale versions of this debate, this justice v. advantage dilemma, like the lunchroom conundrum we've been considering. But we also see this debate manifesting itself within politics. For example, let me ask you a question. Do you think that politicians do what they think is right and just, or do they do what's necessary to advance their own careers and even enrich themselves? What do you think? Or maybe here's a thought experiment. Let's say I'm the leader of a country, and I think it might be advantageous for me to invade one of my neighbors and seize their territory. And sure, people will die and suffer, and maybe it's a violation of international law, but you know what? This is really going to boost the economy. Shouldn't I be able to do whatever I want so long as I can get away with it? And if I can get away with things, if nobody has the authority or the opportunity or the guts to punish me, why shouldn't I steal sandwiches? Why shouldn't I invade my neighbor's country and seize their land? So in this dialogue, Socrates tries to counter this argument. And he begins by critiquing Alcibiades' claim that justice and advantage are not the same thing. For Socrates, and this is a key argument, what is just can never be disadvantageous, and what is unjust can never be advantageous. Now, he demonstrates this with a kind of word game. First, Socrates asks Alcibiades, don't we consider just actions admirable? Isn't justice admirable? And Alcibiades says, yes, of course, justice is admirable. And when we say something is admirable, don't we mean that it's good? Yes, that's correct. So something that is just is also admirable and is also good. Okay, yes. Now, Alcibiades, are you really saying that something that is advantageous is not good? Isn't everything advantageous good by definition? Yes, something that is advantageous must necessarily be good. Fantastic. So what you are saying is that the advantageous is the same as the good, is the same as the admirable, is the same as the just. So what is advantageous is necessarily also what is just. So this is kind of a good trick. It's only sort of persuasive though, right? It's not really a knockout blow. Hi, I'm editing. Let me just clarify things for you. These two guys are talking at cross purposes to each other. In essence, they are disagreeing about what good is. What is good? Or we might say, what benefits me? Alcibiades has made the fairly conventional point that sometimes doing injustice might benefit me. It might be advantageous for me to steal a sandwich, even though it is not just. Now, Socrates mounts a pretty radical counter-argument. He says that cannot be true because doing injustice cannot benefit you. Injustice cannot in any way be called good. That's what his word game is about. He's trying to demonstrate that doing the just thing is the same as doing the good thing is the same as doing the advantageous thing. Only justice, for Socrates, can be considered good and advantageous. So if we think about our lunchroom conundrum, Socrates' answer would be that it's not just wrong to take the sandwich, it's not just unjust, but it also is not good. It would not benefit you. It would actually be disadvantageous for you to steal the sandwich. But you can probably see the flaw in this argument right away. We might want to say, wait a minute, Socrates, you're telling me that when I bite in to that delicious sandwich, which is even more delicious because it is a forbidden sandwich, and when I'm savoring the complex medley of flavors, that is not good. That's not good at all in any way. Alcibiades raises a similar objection in the dialogue. He says, what I think, Socrates, is that some admirable things are bad. So Alcibiades is suggesting that some things might be good in one way, but bad in another way. And the thing that comes up in his conversation with Socrates is the example of rescuing a friend on the battlefield. Are you thinking of this sort of case? Many people get wounded and killed trying to rescue their friends and relatives in battle, while those who don't go to rescue them, as they should, escape safe and sound. Is that what you're referring to? So one thing about the battlefield example is it's a problem for Socrates, right? Because it seems to demonstrate that sometimes when you do the just thing, you die. That seems pretty disadvantageous. So how can Socrates demonstrate that justice, that doing the right thing, is still worth it, even if the consequences of your just action seem to be bad? We will get to that next, but first we've got to talk a little bit more about this battlefield example. Now, this example that Alcibiades and Socrates discuss of rescuing a friend on the battlefield, it's actually a crazy example in this context. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because a few years after this conversation, as Plato would have known, Socrates is actually going to rescue Alcibiades from the battlefield. And more than that, about 8 years after that first incident, Alcibiades will return the favor, risking his life to save his beloved Socrates on a different battlefield. Alcibiades actually talks about one of these incidents in a different dialogue, Plato's Symposium. And if you would like to know what Socrates was like in battle, this is a tribute he really deserves. You know that I was decorated for bravery during that campaign. Well, during that very battle, Socrates single-handedly saved my life. He absolutely did. He just refused to leave me behind when I was wounded, and he rescued not only me, but my armor as well. See, despite the fact that this conversation in this dialogue is at times pretty adversarial, this meeting between Alcibiades and Socrates is actually the beginning of a very consequential relationship. Socrates says that he approaches Alcibiades in the first place because he cares about him. He worries about what's going to happen to this promising, talented young guy once he gets a taste of power and the adulation of the crowd. At the beginning of the Alcibiades, this dialogue, Socrates even describes himself as a lover. I was the first man to fall in love with you, Alcibiades. And now that the others have stopped pursuing you, I suppose you're wondering why I'm the only one who hasn't given up. And also why, when the others pestered you with conversation, I never even spoke to you all these years. Human causes did not enter into it. I was prevented by some divine being, the effect of which you'll hear about later on. But now, it no longer prevents me. So here I am. I'm confident it won't prevent me in future either. Socrates describes himself here as he's like the lovesick loser from every 90s teen movie. He's watching Alcibiades from the sidelines, never daring to approach him. Until now. Now is his big moment. Now's the time. But this is a curious thing because we find out again in the Symposium that Socrates is not actually interested in a romantic or physical relationship with Alcibiades, even though Alcibiades eventually becomes interested in a physical relationship with Socrates. I slipped underneath the cloak and put my arms around this man, this utterly unnatural, this truly extraordinary man, and spent the whole night next to him. Socrates, you can't deny a word of it. But in spite of all my efforts, this hopelessly arrogant, this unbelievably insolent man, he turned me down. Be sure of it. I swear to you, by all the gods and goddesses together, my night with Socrates went no further than if I had spent it with my own father or older brother. So Alcibiades gets put in the philosophical friend zone. But see, Socrates does not see this as a rejection. What Socrates wants most of all is to do philosophy. And he really wants to do philosophy with Alcibiades because he loves him. But precisely because Alcibiades is concerned with material goods, right? With like money and power and the goods of the body, pleasure. He's unable to see that. He's unable to see that Socrates doesn't love him for his body. Socrates loves him for his soul. Now, this is all useful context for the argument that Socrates is about to make. And in fact, this story we heard a minute ago about Socrates putting his life on the line to save his friend on the battlefield, risking the safety of his own body to do a courageous thing. This all prepares us for the argument Socrates is about to make about why justice is still good, even if sometimes the consequences of just actions are bad. Put simply, Socrates takes the choices we have in every situation, the alternatives we're considering, and he renders them vertically. Lots of things are good. Your task as a human is to figure out which things are most desirable, which of the good things are the best good things or the highest good things. You want to take these competing goods and rank them. Delicious candy is good, but like a university education, all the benefits that come from that's probably better than delicious candy. Now, this is kind of a ridiculous example just to illustrate the point, but there are other versions of this kind of decision that are very real. For example, being alive might be good, but freedom might be better. So I might choose in certain situations to risk my life in order to be free. So freedom might be a good I value more highly than the safety and security of my body. This is the calculation that people make when they risk their lives or their bodies fighting for their freedom. In this sort of ranking, this is the method that Socrates prescribes. And as a guideline, as you figure out how to rank things, Socrates says you ought to care about the goods of your soul more than you care about the goods of your body. For Socrates, soul goods matter more than body goods. If the soul matters more than the body, does that mean I can get off this treadmill? Quick treadmill update. I made a New Year's resolution that I would walk or run 300 kilometers on this treadmill. So far, I'm behind pace. We have made some progress. We've traveled about 92 kilometers, which is almost a third of the way, but we are almost halfway through the year. I gotta pick up the pace, but I will persevere because I value the good of glory more highly than I value the good of bodily comfort. Maybe I just know the difference between what's actually good for my body and what seems to be good for my body. That's a total lie. I don't know that at all. Socrates doesn't say that the body doesn't matter. He just thinks the body matters less than the soul does. He makes the argument in this dialogue that your soul is what you really are, and your body is just something that your soul owns. This is what Socrates says in this dialogue anyway, and Alcibiades agrees with him. Do you agree with him? I kind of do. I don't know. I'm not even positive that Plato agrees with him. When Socrates is trying to prove that you are a soul and not a body, his argument is just okay. Once again, he doesn't really deliver a knockout blow. He even says, well, if we've proven it fairly well, although perhaps not rigorously, that will do for us. Not rigorously? This is kind of a big deal because one of the reasons we struggle with goodness, both performing goodness ourselves and advocating for goodness out in the world, is that it can be hard to convince ourselves and other people that there is a thing like a soul or something like a soul that keeps the score of your bad actions. Like, if that's not how it works, then maybe we should all just steal Todd's sandwich. Okay, so I'm a little worried. I talked a big game at the beginning of this video. I was going to provide answers. You'll have answers. You were going to understand stuff, Socrates' arguments, so that you understand them. Socrates was going to persuade Alcibiades to live a virtuous life. Socrates is able to persuade this young guy. All that feels kind of in doubt right now, not going to lie. Are we going to stick the landing? If Socrates can't prove that the soul is real, how do we make the case that soul goods matter more than body goods? What if the body is all there is? Plato might even undercut Socrates here. He gives Socrates a line in this dialogue where he says, and don't people who do things well live successful lives? So here, Socrates still is connecting, the good and the advantageous and the just and like living well. So he's saying like, yeah, if you do things well, doesn't that mean you like are doing good and receiving advantages? Yes. So wouldn't you be successful? Right. But what Socrates means here is like living well is living virtuously. But arguably someone who lived very virtuously, lived very well, but did not succeed in the end is Socrates, who was executed by the state. And do you know why he's executed by the state? Because he failed to persuade Alcibiades that justice is better than advantage. See, there is a sense in which this dialogue is kind of tragic. Another reason why this debate, this conversation is among the most important in the whole history of philosophy is that this relationship between Socrates and Alcibiades might have led to Socrates' execution. See, Alcibiades is persuaded to pursue the philosophical life, but only temporarily, maybe at best periodically. Ultimately, he pursues alternative goods, money, power, honor. Socrates persuades Alcibiades in this dialogue to dedicate himself to the pursuit of wisdom, but in the long run, he fails. Alcibiades entered politics, became sort of a star, committed some sacrilegious acts of vandalism. He aspired to become a tyrant. The city turned against him. He betrayed the city, and ultimately he dies a violent death. Alcibiades was a big problem for Athenian democracy. He was a charismatic, well-connected wannabe tyrant. He was also a big problem for Socrates. You probably know Socrates was executed by democratic Athens for practicing philosophy. But specifically, one of the specific charges that was made against Socrates was corrupting the youth. He was accused of corrupting the youth. And there were lots of young guys who hung around Socrates and wanted to study philosophy with him. But his most notorious associate was Alcibiades. Socrates tries to turn Alcibiades towards a life of philosophy, and he fails. But he still gets blamed for Alcibiades' bad behavior, and it might have cost him his life. Socrates does the right thing, and bad things happen to him. Doesn't it seem, in his case, that doing the right thing was disadvantageous? Socrates does offer up one very powerful argument, at least I think it's a very powerful argument, for the primacy of the soul over the body. It might not prove that the soul exists, but it does suggest that there's something more to us than simply bodies. For Socrates, love is proof that the soul is real, and proof that we should rank the goods of the soul above material goods like money or pleasure. Now, if there was someone who loved Alcibiades' body, he wouldn't be loving Alcibiades, only something that belonged to Alcibiades. That's right. But someone who loved you would love your soul. By our argument, I think he'd have to. Wouldn't someone who loves your body go off and leave you when your beauty is no longer in full bloom? Obviously. But someone who loves your soul will not leave you as long as you're making progress. That's probably right. Well, I'm the one who won't leave you. I'm the one who will stay with you now that your body has lost its bloom and everyone else has gone away. I'm glad you are, Socrates, and I hope you never leave me. Socrates is not like other guys. He loves Alcibiades for his soul, not his body. And I think we intuitively understand this argument. If we hear that, someone tells you they love you only for your body, we would think that's not love. And this does suggest that maybe there's some part of us that maybe we're more than just like an electrified stack of meat and bone. Is that what the body is? I never really studied biology. And it may suggest that the goods that affect that part of us, love, courage, education, maybe they are higher goods, more valuable goods than even the most delicious sandwich. At the very beginning of this dialogue, one of the first things that Socrates says about Alcibiades, he says, Alcibiades, you think you don't need anybody. But it turns out he does. We all need other people, usually just for getting through life, health and safety, security, gathering food, taking care of each other, but also for happiness and well-being. Other people are good. Even the most narcissistic tyrants need other people in order to achieve their narcissistic tyrannical goals. We need other people to undertake any substantial, significant endeavor. We can't really accomplish very much on our own. And even if you do some cool thing entirely on your own, once you're done, once you've made the cool thing, you need other people to acknowledge your coolness. Otherwise, what's the point? And if that's the case, our well-being is inextricably tied to this thunderous sounds from one of the people to whom I am inextricably tied. We need others. If that's the case, then my well-being is bound up with other people's well-being. Your well-being is bound up with the well-being of others. In that way, it turns out your actual self-interest is served by justice, by helping, protecting, taking care of other people. Or, to put it another way, soul or no soul, promoting community, promoting justice is actually the thing that's advantageous for you. I'm spending the summer of goodness, making videos about goodness. So you can watch the next video in the series by clicking on that link. I will see you there, and I'll talk to you soon.